Is it possible to drain an ocean? The kind that covers 70% of this planet, that goes down 4 kilometers on average and nearly 11 at its deepest point, that contains so much water that if you spread it evenly across the entire surface of the Earth, land included, it would sit 2.5 kilometers deep everywhere. Let's say you had everything available to humanity. Every engineer, every machine, every power source ever built. Let's say you pointed all of it at the ocean and said drain it. Here's what would actually happen. The most obvious approach is pumping. The largest industrial pumps ever constructed can move roughly 10 cubic meters of water per second. The ocean contains 1.335 billion cubic kilometers of water. Running every large industrial pump on Earth simultaneously, without stopping, you would drain the ocean in approximately 3 million years. 3 million years ago, humans hadn't invented tools yet. You'd finish roughly around the time whatever comes after us is trying to figure out what we were. So you need something faster. What if you boiled it? Evaporation is how nature moves water. Heated enough, it rises into the atmosphere. The energy required to boil the entire ocean is roughly 10 to the power of 26 joules. Every power plant on Earth combined produces about 6 times 10 to the power of 20 joules per year. You'd need something like a billion years of total global energy production running simultaneously. But let's say you found that energy. You heat the ocean. It evaporates. It rises. And then it has nowhere to go. The entire ocean is now sitting in the atmosphere above you. The weight of that water vapor pressing down would increase atmospheric pressure to levels that crush everything alive on land. The humidity alone would make the air unbreathable. Then the temperature spikes, the clouds build, and it starts to rain. The entire ocean, falling back from the sky. All of it simultaneously, dropping back onto the surface at a volume that would make every flood in recorded history look like a dripping tap. The ocean didn't go anywhere. It went up, broke everything on the way, and came back angrier than when you started. What about freezing it? You redirect every cooling system on Earth and freeze the ocean solid. Except water expands when it freezes. By about 9%, the frozen ocean pushes outward in every direction simultaneously. Every coastline crushed inward, every tectonic fault line on Earth subjected to simultaneous pressure it wasn't built to handle. The earthquakes and volcanic activity triggered by that shift would restructure the surface of the planet in ways that make every natural disaster in recorded history look like background noise. And eventually, it melts. Because you can't hold that temperature forever. And when it does, you have an ocean sitting on a planet that no longer resembles the one it left. What about sending it to space? Elon Musk became the world's first trillionaire this year. The first human being in history to accumulate $1 million. $1 trillion. A number so large that if you spent $1 million every single day, it would take you 2,700 years to spend it. Launching 1 kilogram of water to space on a SpaceX Falcon 9, Musk's own rocket, the cheapest orbital launch vehicle currently flying, costs approximately $2,700. The ocean contains roughly 1.335 times 10 to the power of 21 kilograms of water. The total cost of launching the ocean into space using SpaceX rockets would be approximately $3.6 septillion. In Elon Musk's, you would need 3.6 trillion of him. 3.6 trillion of the only trillionaire who has ever existed. Every one of them spending every dollar they had to afford to launch the ocean off this planet. And that's before the rocket fuel required for all those launches needs to be burned in the atmosphere. At that volume, the exhaust alone would raise global temperatures and alter the air to the point where the surface becomes uninhabitable long before you'd moved a fraction of a percent of the water. You would destroy the planet trying to remove the ocean from it. So every method collapses under its own consequences. The pumping takes longer than human history stretches backward. The boiling brings it back as a planetary flood. The freezing reshapes the continents. The launching costs 3.6 trillion times the wealth of the richest person who has ever lived and burns the atmosphere in the attempt. The ocean is connected to everything: the atmosphere, the climate, the water cycle, the temperature of the planet. Pull on it hard enough and everything else comes with it. And yet, 5.6 million years ago, the Mediterranean Sea disappeared. What is today one of the most recognizable bodies of water on Earth, bordered by dozens of countries, sat for roughly 600,000 years as a salt desert, in places 3 to 5 kilometers below the level of the surrounding ocean. Deeper than Everest is tall, measured from the bottom up. The African and Eurasian tectonic plates had been drifting toward each other for millions of years. That movement gradually closed the Strait of Gibraltar, the narrow connection between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean loses more water to evaporation each year than it gains from rivers. The only thing keeping it full was the Atlantic constantly flowing in through that strait. When the strait closed, the sea began to die. Within 1,000 years, it was gone. What remained was a salt desert sitting kilometers below sea level. Summer temperatures at the basin floor may have reached 80 degrees Celsius. Only bacteria survived in the remaining pools. The Nile kept flowing and carved a canyon 2,400 meters deeper than its current bed, buried now under Cairo, invisible from above, detectable only in geological surveys. Animals walked between Africa and Europe on dry land where there had been open water. The salt left behind when the water evaporated represents 5 to 6% of all the dissolved salt in all the world's oceans today. There are mines in Sicily still extracting it. The planet dried out a sea with nothing more than two slow-moving plates and a warm, dry climate. Over thousands of years, quietly, without breaking anything else in the process. And then the Atlantic came back. Around 5.33 million years ago, something gave way at Gibraltar. The Atlantic, sitting roughly a kilometer higher than the empty basin floor, found a way through. As water flowed, it eroded the channel. As the channel widened, more water came. The flow fed itself until at its peak it was moving an estimated 100 million cubic meters of water per second. The Amazon moves about 200,000 cubic meters per second. The refilling of the Mediterranean was moving 500 times the Amazon every second. 90% of the basin refilled in somewhere between a few months and 2 years. The sea level inside was rising at more than 10 meters per day. The sea that took thousands of years to empty was full again in roughly the time it takes a child to finish primary school. So is it possible to drain an ocean? For us, nowhere close. Every method either takes longer than our entire civilization has existed or breaks the planet in the attempt. The ocean is simply not a problem that scales to anything humans can build. The Earth doesn't need our methods. It closed a strait, let evaporation do the rest, and turned a sea into a desert for 600,000 years without any help from anyone. We couldn't drain an ocean if we tried. The planet already did it by accident, and then filled it back up in a couple of years like it was nothing.